The morning I found the cease and desist letter taped to my front door in Lakewood, Colorado. I was sipping my coffee and watching the first real snowfall of December through my kitchen window. My name is Xavier, and I had just finished installing the most beautiful heated driveway and sidewalk system money could buy. After 3 years of back-breaking snow removal every winter morning, I had finally saved enough to install radiant heating beneath my concrete. The installation cost me $42,000, but every penny felt worth it when I could wake up to 6 inches of fresh powder and walk outside to perfectly clear, dry pavement. The letter was printed on expensive cream-colored cardstock with the Ridgemont Estates HOA letterhead embossed at the top. I recognized the signature immediately. Brenda Morrison, HOA president, had signed her name with such force that the pen had nearly torn through the paper. "Dear Mr. Xavier," it began, "it has come to the attention of the Ridgemont Estates Homeowners Association Board that you have installed an unauthorized snow melting system on your property. This installation violates Article 7, Section 3 of the Community Bylaws, which states that all exterior modifications must receive written approval from the board prior to installation. You are hereby ordered to cease use of this system immediately and appear before the board at the next scheduled meeting on December 15th to discuss remediation. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250. I read the letter 3 times, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Article 7, Section 3. I pulled out my copy of the HOA bylaws, a document I had received when I bought the house 4 years ago but had honestly never read in full. There it was, buried on page 47. The language was vague and broad, covering everything from paint colors to landscaping changes. Technically, my heated system could be considered an exterior modification, even though it was buried beneath the concrete and completely invisible to anyone walking by. The real kicker was that I had actually submitted a request form 8 months ago when I was in the planning stages. I had never received a response, not an approval, not a denial, nothing. After 90 days of silence, I had checked the bylaws and found a clause stating that requests not answered within 60 days were considered approved by default. I had the certified mail receipt proving they had received my request. I spent the rest of that morning digging through my files, pulling out every document related to the installation. The original request form with detailed plans, the certified mail receipt, the contractor's permits from the county, my bank statements showing the payment schedule. I had everything organized into a neat folder by the time I called the HOA office. A woman named Patricia answered. "Ridgemont Estates, HOA, how may I help you? This is Xavier from 2847 Pinecrest Drive. I received a cease and desist letter this morning regarding my snow melting system. I need to speak with someone about this because I submitted a request 8 months ago and never received a response. Hold, please." Elevator music played for 7 minutes. I counted. "Mr. Xavier?" A different voice now, sharp and clipped. Brenda Morrison herself. "I understand you are calling about the letter regarding your unauthorized installation. Mrs. Morrison, I submitted a complete request package in April. I have the certified mail receipt showing it was delivered to the HOA office on April 10th. According to the bylaws, requests not answered within 60 days are automatically approved. That clause was amended at the annual meeting in June. All pending requests were voided and must be resubmitted under the new guidelines. I was never notified of any amendment. And I attended the June meeting. There was no vote on modifying the approval process." Her voice turned icy. "Mr. Xavier, are you calling me a liar? I am saying that I was not informed of any changes, and I followed the proper procedures as they were written in the bylaws I received. Regardless, your system is not approved. You will shut it off immediately or you will face fines. The meeting is on the 15th at 7 in the evening at the community center. I suggest you attend. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. The snow was still falling outside, already accumulating on the street. My driveway and front sidewalk remained perfectly clear, the heated system doing exactly what it was designed to do. My neighbors on both sides were already out with their shovels, bundled in heavy coats and working up a sweat, despite the 20-degree temperature. The logical part of my brain told me to just shut off the system, attend the meeting, and sort this out properly. But another part of me, the part that had spent $42,000 and countless hours researching and planning this installation, was furious. I had followed the rules. I had done everything correctly. And now Brenda Morrison, who drove a black Mercedes SUV with a vanity plate reading "Ho Queen," was trying to bully me into submission. I decided to leave the system running, at least until the meeting. The next morning, there was another letter on my door. Notice of fine was printed in bold red letters across the top. $250 for the first day of non-compliance. I took a photo of it and added it to my folder. Over the next week, I received a letter every single morning. The fines accumulated quickly. $1,750 by the time the meeting rolled around. December 15th arrived with another 6 inches of snow overnight. I dressed carefully for the meeting, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, carrying a leather portfolio containing all my documentation. The community center was a modest building at the entrance to our development, with a large meeting room that could hold about 50 people. I arrived at 6:45 to find the parking lot already packed. Apparently, word had spread about the meeting. I recognized most of my neighbors filing into the building, stamping snow off their boots and unwinding scarves. The meeting room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a long table at the front. Brenda Morrison sat in the center, flanked by 4 other board members. Brenda was exactly what you would picture when you heard the phrase HOA president. She was 53 years old with platinum blonde hair cut in a severe bob, wearing a navy blue power suit and enough jewelry to open a small store. Her lips were pressed into a thin line of perpetual disapproval. To her right was Gerald Hutchins, the treasurer, a nervous-looking man in his 60s who kept adjusting his glasses. To her left sat Deanne Foster, the secretary, who was busily typing on a laptop. The other 2 board members were William Chen and Susan Rodriguez, both of whom looked like they would rather be anywhere else. I took a seat in the 3rd row, right in the middle. The room filled up quickly, every seat taken by 6:55. I noticed my next-door neighbor, Tom, giving me a thumbs up from across the room. Brenda called the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock by banging a small gavel 3 times. Good evening, everyone. We have quite a full agenda tonight, but I know many of you are here regarding the matter of Mr. Xavier's unauthorized snow melting system. We will address that issue first. She looked directly at me. Mr. Xavier, please come forward. I walked to the front of the room, my portfolio in hand. There was no podium, so I stood facing the board with 50 pairs of eyes on my back. Mr. Xavier, you received our cease and desist letter regarding your installation of a heated driveway system without board approval. You have continued to operate this system despite our directive. Do you have anything to say before we proceed with further action? I opened my portfolio and pulled out the first document. Mrs. Morrison, members of the board, I have here a copy of the request form I submitted on April 8th of this year. I sent it via certified mail, and here is the receipt showing it was received by the HOA office on April 10th. I placed both documents on the table in front of them. According to Article 7, Section 9 of the bylaws, any request not responded to within 60 days is considered approved. 60 days from April 10th would be June 9th. I received no response of any kind. Therefore, my installation was legally approved by default. Brenda barely glanced at the documents. As I told you on the phone, that provision was amended. All pending requests were voided. I attended the annual meeting in June. I have the minutes right here. I pulled out another document. There is no record of any vote to amend the bylaws. Bylaw amendments require a majority vote of the membership, not just the board. Where is the documentation of this vote? Deanne, the secretary, looked up from her laptop with a panicked expression. Gerald started shuffling through a stack of papers in front of him. Susan and William exchanged glances. Brenda's face flushed red. The vote was taken. If it is not in the minutes, that is a clerical error. A clerical error that allows you to void properly submitted requests. I kept my voice level and professional. Mrs. Morrison, I have the county permits for this installation. I have receipts showing that a licensed contractor performed all the work, and I have proof that I followed every procedure outlined in the bylaws. What specific rule have I violated? The aesthetic standards of this community. Brenda slammed her hand on the table. That system uses energy, it creates runoff, and it sets a precedent that will have every homeowner in this development installing whatever they want without proper oversight. The system is invisible. No one can see it. The runoff is just water, the same as if the snow had melted naturally, which it does anyway by afternoon most days. And as for energy use, that is my electric bill to pay, not the HOA's concern. A few people in the audience murmured in agreement. I saw Tom nodding vigorously. Furthermore, I continued, the county requires property owners to maintain their sidewalks in a safe, snow-free condition. My system does that automatically. If you force me to shut it off, you will be requiring me to either shovel manually or face potential county fines and liability if someone slips and falls. Then shovel manually like everyone else, Brenda snapped. We all have to do it. You are not special, Mr. Xavier. I did shovel manually for 3 years. I saved up to install this system specifically to comply with the county requirements more effectively. This is not about being special. This is about following the rules, which I did. Brenda looked at the other board members. I call for a vote to uphold the cease and desist order and to continue daily fines until Mr. Xavier complies. All in favor? Brenda raised her hand immediately. Gerald hesitantly raised his after a moment. Deanne looked terrified but raised her hand as well. Susan spoke up. I would like to see the documentation of the bylaw amendment before I vote. Seconded, William added. Brenda's jaw clenched. The documentation will be provided. In the meantime, 3 votes are sufficient for a board decision. Mr. Xavier, you are ordered to shut down your system within 24 hours. The fines will continue to accumulate until you comply. This matter is closed. This matter is not closed, I said firmly. I will be consulting with an attorney. If the HOA continues to impose fines for a legally approved installation, I will pursue legal action. That is your right, Brenda said coldly. But until a court says otherwise, you will follow our directive. You may sit down. I returned to my seat, my hands shaking slightly with anger. The meeting continued with other mundane topics, but I barely heard any of it. When it finally ended at 8:30, several neighbors approached me in the parking lot. Marcus, that was incredible, Tom said. She had no answer for your documentation. Everyone could see she was just making things up. "Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the support, but she has the board majority, at least for now." An older woman I recognized from 2 streets over joined us. "Mr. Xavier, I am Margaret Winters. I have lived in this development for 12 years, and I have watched Brenda Morrison abuse her power for the last 3. She has personal vendettas against half the neighborhood. Last year, she fined the Johnsons $5,000 because their Christmas lights were allegedly too bright. The year before that, she forced the Ramirez family to repaint their house because she said the beige they chose was not on the approved color list, even though it was the exact shade listed as option 14. "Why does anyone vote for her?" I asked. Margaret shook her head. "Most people do not vote at all. Board elections are held in January, and only about 15% of homeowners show up. Brenda runs every year, and she always wins because she has a core group of supporters who vote as a block. Gerald and Deanne are completely under her control. Susan and William are newer, and they occasionally push back, but not enough to make a difference." Another neighbor, a man I did not know well, spoke up. "She also controls who gets on the ballot. You have to submit a petition with signatures from 10% of homeowners just to be nominated. Most people cannot be bothered to go door to door collecting signatures, so the same people run unopposed every year." I thanked them for the information and drove home, my mind racing. I had 2 options. I could comply and shut off the system, then fight this through proper channels, which could take months or years. Or I could keep the system running and let the fines accumulate while I pursued legal action immediately. When I got home, I called a friend from college who had become an attorney. Jake Morrison, no relation to Brenda, practiced property law in Denver. I explained the situation, emailed him all my documents, and waited while he reviewed them. He called me back an hour later. "Marcus, you have a solid case. You followed the procedures exactly. The HOA cannot retroactively void an approval, especially not without proper documentation of a bylaw amendment. But here is the thing. Fighting this will cost you money upfront in legal fees, and it could take 6 months to a year to resolve completely. In the meantime, those daily fines are accumulating. What do you recommend?" 2 approaches. "First, I will draft a letter to the HOA citing the relevant case law and demanding they cease the fines and acknowledge your approval. That might scare them into backing down. If not, we file a lawsuit for declaratory judgment. But Marcus, HOAs can be vindictive. Even if you win, Brenda Morrison sounds like the type who will make your life miserable in other ways." "She already is," I said. "I will get that letter out tomorrow. In the meantime, document everything. Every interaction, every letter, every fine. Take photos, keep emails, save voicemails, everything." I thanked Jake and hung up. Then I walked outside into the cold night air. Snow was still falling lightly, and my driveway remained perfectly clear while every other driveway on the street was covered in white. I made a decision. I was leaving the system on. The next morning, another fine notice appeared on my door. Jake's letter arrived at the HOA office via certified mail that afternoon. I got a copy of the delivery confirmation. For 2 days, there was silence. No response from the HOA, no more fine notices. I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they would back down. Then on the 3rd day, December 19th, I came home from work to find my driveway covered in snow. Not fresh snow from the sky. No, someone had deliberately piled snow onto my heated driveway. A lot of snow. It looked like they had shoveled snow from several other driveways and dumped it on mine. The system was still running. I could see steam rising from where the heat was trying to melt the massive pile, but it was overwhelmed. There was easily 3 feet of snow mounded across my driveway entrance. I walked around the property and found the same thing on my front sidewalk. More piled snow, deliberately placed. I took extensive photos from every angle, including shots that showed the clear areas on either side where snow had obviously been removed to create these piles. Then, I called Jake. "They are escalating," he said grimly. "This could be considered harassment or property damage. You should file a police report." I called the Lakewood police non-emergency line. An officer arrived 30 minutes later, a young woman named Officer Sarah Chen. She examined the snow piles, took her own photos, and wrote up a report. "You have any idea who did this?" she asked. "The HOA has been fining me for using my snow melting system. I assume it's related, but I have no proof. Security cameras, not yet. I will be installing some tomorrow." She handed me a copy of the report. "Keep this for your records. If it happens again, call us immediately, and definitely get those cameras up." That evening, I ordered a comprehensive security system with 6 cameras covering every angle of my property. I paid extra for rush installation, and the company came out the next morning, December 20th. While the technicians were installing the cameras, another fine notice appeared on my door, but this one was different. Instead of the standard $250 for the snow melting system, it was for $500. The violation listed was failure to maintain clear sidewalks, dated for the previous day when someone had piled snow on my property. I actually laughed out loud. The audacity was stunning. They had sabotaged my property and then fined me for it. I sent Jake a photo of the notice along with the police report. He called me immediately. "Marcus, this is good. I mean, it's terrible for you, but it is exactly the kind of overreach that judges hate. I am going to accelerate the lawsuit. We will file by the end of the week." The camera installation was completed by noon. That night, I received an alert on my phone at 2:15 in the morning. Motion detected on front driveway camera. I pulled up the live feed on my phone and watched in real time as a figure in dark clothing shoveled snow onto my driveway. The person was wearing a ski mask, but their build and movements were clearly visible. It was a man, average height, moving quickly and glancing around nervously. I called 911. "Someone is vandalizing my property right now. I have them on camera." The dispatcher sent a patrol car immediately. I stayed on the phone watching the feed. The vandal was so focused on his task that he did not notice the police car pulling up without lights until Officer Chen stepped out and called to him. He dropped the shovel and ran. He made it about 20 feet before he slipped on ice and went down hard. Officer Chen was on him in seconds, handcuffing him while her partner secured the scene. I went outside in my bathrobe and slippers. The vandal was sitting on the curb, his ski mask removed. I recognized him immediately. It was Gerald Hutchins, the HOA treasurer. "Mr. Hutchins." I said in disbelief. He would not look at me. Officer Chen was reading him his rights. "You want to press charges?" she asked me. "Absolutely." Gerald was taken to the police station. I provided the camera footage to the officers, which clearly showed him vandalizing my property. Officer Chen told me I could come to the station the next day to give a formal statement. I barely slept the rest of that night. The implications were enormous. A board member, the treasurer of the HOA, had been caught red-handed vandalizing my property. And the timing suggested the previous incident had likely been him as well. At 8 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Jake. "Marcus, I just got the most interesting phone call. The HOA's attorney wants to meet to discuss settlement." "Already? How did they even know about last night?" "My guess is Gerald called someone after he was arrested. Word travels fast. They know they have a serious problem. What are they offering? He would not say over the phone. He wants to meet in person this afternoon. Are you available? I will make myself available. We met at Jake's office in Denver at 3 o'clock. The HOA's attorney was a man named Richard Preston, a partner at a firm that specialized in HOA law. He came alone, without any board members. "Gentlemen," he began, "let me be direct. The board has made some serious errors in judgment regarding Mr. Xavier's snow melting system. After reviewing the documentation, it is clear that his approval should have been granted by default. We are prepared to offer the following settlement. All fines will be rescinded. The HOA will provide written approval for the system retroactively, and we will pay $10,000 to cover Mr. Xavier's legal fees and any associated costs." Jake did not even blink. "That does not address the harassment, the property damage, or the false fines that were issued after Mr. Xavier's property was vandalized. Your treasurer was arrested last night for vandalizing my client's property. The police have video evidence." Richard Preston's face went pale. "I was not aware of the specifics of that situation." "Then you are not prepared to negotiate," Jake said. "Here is what we want: complete rescission of all fines, written approval of the snow melting system with acknowledgement that it was properly submitted and approved by default, a formal written apology from the board, and $50,000 to compensate Mr. Xavier for harassment, property damage, legal fees, and emotional distress. Furthermore, Brenda Morrison must resign from the board immediately." "That is excessive," Preston protested. "No," Jake said calmly. "What is excessive is a board president who abuses her power to harass homeowners, and a treasurer who commits criminal vandalism at 2 in the morning. My client has suffered months of stress, thousands of dollars in fines and damage to his property. We have documented everything. We have police reports. We have video evidence. If this goes to court, the discovery process will likely reveal other instances of board misconduct. How many other homeowners has Mrs. Morrison targeted? How many improper fines have been issued? Are you prepared to defend that in court?" Richard Preston was silent for a long moment. "I need to speak with my clients. Can I have until tomorrow?" "You have until 5 o'clock today," Jake said. "After that, we file the lawsuit and the offer is off the table." Preston left. Jake and I sat in his office drinking coffee and waiting. At 4:47, Preston called back. "We accept your terms with one modification. Mrs. Morrison will resign from the board, but the settlement will include a non-disclosure agreement. Neither party will discuss the terms or the circumstances with anyone outside the immediate parties involved." Jake looked at me. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to shout from the rooftops about what had happened, but another part of me just wanted this nightmare to end. "I want the HOA to send a notice to all homeowners clarifying that the bylaw provision regarding automatic approval is still in effect and has not been amended," I said. "If they have been using this false amendment to deny other requests, that needs to be corrected." Jake relayed my condition. Preston agreed. We had a deal. The settlement was finalized 3 days later, on December 23rd. I received a check for $50,000. All the fine notices were formally rescinded in writing. The HOA provided an official letter approving my snow melting system and acknowledging that it had been properly submitted and approved. And Brenda Morrison submitted her resignation from the board, effective immediately. The HOA also sent a notice to all homeowners explaining that there had been administrative confusion regarding the automatic approval provision, and that it remained in full effect per the existing bylaws. Gerald Hutchins faced criminal charges for the vandalism. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor criminal mischief in early January, and received a sentence of 6 months probation, community service, and restitution for the cost of my security system installation. He also resigned from the board. But here is where the story took an unexpected turn. After Brenda's resignation, the board was down to 3 members: Deanne, Susan, and William. They had to hold a special election to fill the 2 vacant positions. The election was scheduled for February 15th. In January, I received multiple phone calls and visits from neighbors asking me to run for the board. Margaret Winters was particularly persistent. "Marcus, we need people like you on that board, people who will actually follow the rules and not abuse their power. You stood up to Brenda and you won. That took courage." I was initially reluctant. The last thing I wanted was more involvement with the HOA, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I had learned the bylaws inside and out. I understood property law now. And I had a vested interest in making sure the board functioned properly. I agreed to run. Tom, my neighbor, also agreed to run for the second vacant position. We spent 3 weeks going door to door, collecting the required signatures and talking to homeowners about the issues. The response was overwhelming. People were tired of the old regime. They wanted change. The election was held on a cold Tuesday evening in February. Turnout was unprecedented. Instead of the usual 15%, over 60% of homeowners showed up to vote. Tom and I won by landslide margins. At my first board meeting in late February, we had a new dynamic. The board now consisted of Susan Rodriguez as president, William Chen as vice president, Tom as treasurer, Diane Foster still as secretary, and me as a general board member. Susan had been elected president unanimously. She was organized, fair, and had no interest in petty power games. One of our first actions was to review all the fines that had been issued over the previous 3 years. We found dozens of questionable fines, many targeting the same families repeatedly. We sent letters to those homeowners offering to review their cases and consider rescinding improper fines. We also revised the bylaws to add more specific language about approval processes, fine procedures, and appeals. Everything was presented to the membership for a vote at the annual meeting in June. The changes passed with over 80% approval. In March, I received an unexpected visitor. Brenda Morrison showed up at my door on a Saturday afternoon. She looked different from the last time I had seen her. Less makeup, more casual clothes, and a weariness in her eyes that had not been there before. "Mr. Xavier," she said quietly, "may I speak with you for a moment?" I was tempted to close the door, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Mrs. Morrison?" "I want to apologize, not because the settlement requires it, that is done, but because I owe you a personal apology. What I did was wrong. I let my position go to my head. I treated you and many others unfairly. I am sorry." I was genuinely surprised. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have spent the last 3 months in therapy, dealing with some things I should have dealt with years ago. My therapist helped me see that I was using the HOA as a way to control things when I felt like my life was out of control. My marriage was falling apart. My kids had all moved away and barely spoke to me. I poured all my energy into the HOA because it was the one place where I felt important and powerful, and I abused that power badly." She looked down at her hands. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I am aware of what I did, and I am working on becoming a better person. I have also apologized to the Johnsons, the Ramirez family, and several others I treated poorly. I know it does not undo the harm, but it is something." I did not know what to say. "Thank you for telling me this. I appreciate the apology." She nodded and left. I closed the door and stood there for a moment, processing the conversation. People are complicated. Brenda had been a tyrant as HOA president, but she was also a person dealing with her own struggles. It did not excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it. The rest of the winter and spring passed peacefully. My snow melting system worked flawlessly through several more snowstorms. Every time I walked outside to a clear driveway while my neighbors shoveled, I felt grateful for the system and grateful that I had stood up for myself. Tom and I worked well together on the board. We streamlined processes, improved communication with homeowners, and made sure that every decision was documented and transparent. Susan was an excellent president, always prepared and fair. Even Diane, once she was out from under Brenda's influence, turned out to be an efficient and detail-oriented secretary. In May, we received an application from another homeowner requesting approval to install a snow melting system. Tom and I looked at each other across the meeting table and smiled. Susan reviewed the application, which was complete and professionally prepared. "Any objections to approving this?" she asked. "None," I said. "Approved unanimously," Susan declared. "And may I say, Mr. Xavier's system has proven to be both effective and completely unobtrusive. I see no reason to prevent other homeowners from installing similar systems." By June, 3 more applications for snow melting systems had been submitted and approved. The precedent was set. At the annual meeting in June, I presented a proposal to amend the bylaws to specifically allow snow melting systems as a permitted installation without requiring individual approval, as long as they met basic safety standards and were installed by licensed contractors. The amendment passed easily. In July, I received a letter from the county. They were reviewing the case of an elderly resident who had been fined by the county for failing to maintain her sidewalk after she slipped and fell while shoveling. The woman had broken her hip and was unable to shovel for weeks, resulting in multiple county fines. The county was now offering to waive those fines if she installed a snow melting system, and they had heard about our community's policy change. They wanted to use Ridgemont Estates as a model for encouraging safety-oriented home modifications. I coordinated with the woman, Mrs. Patterson, who lived 4 blocks away from me. The HOA expedited her approval, and several neighbors, including me, contributed to a fund to help cover her installation costs. By August, her system was installed and ready for the next winter. In September, I received a call from a reporter at the Denver Post. Someone had tipped them off about the HOA situation from the previous winter. Despite the non-disclosure agreement preventing me from discussing the settlement terms, there was nothing preventing me from discussing the public facts: the arrest report, the board election, and the policy changes. The reporter wrote a feature article about HOA reform and the importance of homeowner engagement. The article mentioned Ridgemont Estates as a success story, highlighting how increased turnout and community involvement had transformed a dysfunctional board into an effective one. The article did not mention Brenda or Gerald by name, but it discussed the general problems with HOA governance when power goes unchecked. The article generated significant interest. I received calls from homeowners in other developments asking for advice on how to reform their own HOAs. I found myself becoming something of an accidental activist, giving talks at community meetings and helping other homeowners understand their rights under Colorado HOA law. In October, I ran into Gerald Hutchins at the grocery store. He was alone, pushing a cart and looking tired. When he saw me, he froze. "Mr. Xavier," he said nervously, "I want you to know how sorry I am. What I did was inexcusable." "You already apologized in court," I said. "I know, but I mean it." Brenda convinced me that you were causing trouble, that you were trying to undermine the board. I let myself get caught up in that narrative without thinking critically. I should have questioned what she was asking me to do. I should have said no. I did not, and I am paying the price. How are you doing? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Honestly, I lost my position at work. Not because of the criminal record, but because the stress of everything made me fall behind on my projects. My wife is furious with me, but I am going to counseling, like Brenda. I am trying to understand why I went along with something I knew was wrong. That is good, I said. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do afterward. He thanked me and walked away. I stood in the produce aisle, thinking about how many lives had been affected by one HOA dispute, Brenda's marriage problems and need for control, Gerald's weakness and willingness to follow orders without question, the dozens of homeowners who had been unfairly fined or harassed, and me, just a guy who wanted to heat his driveway. November arrived, and with it, the first snow of the new season. I woke up on the first snowy morning and made my coffee, looking out at the familiar sight of my clear driveway and sidewalk. But this time, I noticed something different. Mrs. Patterson's house, 4 blocks away, was also snow-free. And the house 2 doors down from her, and another house across the street from me. The snow melting systems were spreading. Over that winter, 10 more households in Ridgemont Estates installed systems. The HOA approved every single application without issue. We had gone from one controversial installation to a dozen accepted ones in less than a year. In January of the following year, board elections came around again. Tom and I were both eligible for re-election and chose to run again. We were both re-elected with strong support. Susan continued as president, and our board meetings remained drama-free and productive. One evening in late January, I was shoveling my back patio, one area where I had not installed heating because it was covered and rarely accumulated much snow. My doorbell rang. When I answered, I found Margaret Winters standing there with a plate of cookies. "Margaret, what a nice surprise. Come in." She stepped inside, stamping snow off her boots. "Marcus, I wanted to thank you, not just for the HOA work, though that has been wonderful, but for showing everyone that it is worth fighting for what is right. My granddaughter was here last month, and she heard me talking about what happened with Brenda. She is having trouble with her student housing association at CSU, and hearing about what you did inspired her to push back against some unfair charges they were hitting her with. She won her case." "That is fantastic," I said. "I am glad I could help, even indirectly." "You did more than help," Margaret said. "You reminded all of us that we have power as homeowners, that we do not have to just accept whatever the board says if it is wrong. Attendance at meetings is still high. People are engaged. They are reading the bylaws and asking questions. That never happened before you stood up to Brenda." After Margaret left, I sat in my living room eating her cookies and reflecting on everything that had happened. 15 months ago, I had just been a guy with a heated driveway who wanted to avoid shoveling snow. I had no interest in HOA politics or community activism. But circumstances had forced me to get involved, and in doing so, I had become part of something larger than myself. The next morning, I received an email from the Ridgemont Estates HOA. It was a newsletter, something we had started publishing monthly to keep homeowners informed. The lead article was about winter safety and highlighted the snow melting systems as an effective option for elderly residents or anyone with mobility issues. It included information about vendors, typical costs, and the streamlined approval process. That afternoon, I got a call from Tom. "Marcus, you are not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with a guy from Lakewood City Council. They want to do a public hearing about creating an incentive program for snow melting systems. They think it could reduce slip and fall injuries and make sidewalks safer throughout the city. They want us to testify about our experience with the systems. Seriously. Seriously. They are looking at possibly offering tax credits or rebates for homeowners who install them. You could end up getting some of your installation cost back. I laughed. That would be amazing. When is the hearing? Next month. I already said we would be there. The hearing took place in mid-February. Tom and I presented information about the safety benefits, energy efficiency, and community impact of snow melting systems. The council seemed genuinely interested. They passed a resolution to study the feasibility of an incentive program, with a report due by the end of the year. In March, I got a voicemail from an unexpected source. It was Brenda Morrison. "Mr. Xavier, this is Brenda Morrison. I heard about your testimony at the City Council hearing. I just wanted to say that what you are doing is good work. You have taken something that started as a conflict and turned it into something positive for the whole community. I wish I had been that kind of leader. Anyway, I did not expect you to call back. I just wanted you to know that I am proud of what you have accomplished. Take care." I saved the voicemail. It felt like a closing of a chapter, a final piece of resolution to a difficult period. Spring arrived, and with it, the end of snow season. My system shut off automatically when temperatures remained consistently above freezing. The total energy cost for the entire winter had been about $800, less than I had spent on a gym membership back, when I was shoveling daily and throwing out my back regularly. In May, the HOA held a community event, something we had started doing quarterly to build neighborhood connections. It was a simple potluck in the community center, but it drew a huge crowd. People were talking, laughing, sharing food. The sense of community was strong. Susan approached me during the event. "Marcus, I have been thinking. We should create a homeowner advisory committee to review proposed bylaw changes and provide input to the board. Would you be interested in chairing it?" "I would, but I am already on the board." "I know. But your term is up next January. If you do not run again, I would like you to stay involved in this capacity. We need your perspective." "Let me think about it," I said. I did think about it over the next several months. Being on the board had been rewarding but also time-consuming. The advisory committee role would let me stay involved without the weekly meetings and administrative responsibilities. In December, I made my decision. I would not run for re-election to the board, but I would chair the advisory committee. Tom decided to run again, and he was joined by 2 other candidates who had been active in community meetings. The election in January was competitive but civil, with all 3 candidates qualified and capable. Tom was re-elected, and the 2 new board members brought fresh energy and ideas. I started my work with the advisory committee in February, and it quickly became clear that this was the right role for me. We reviewed proposed changes, researched best practices from other HOAs, and provided recommendations to the board. It was collaborative and productive, without the politics and personality conflicts that sometimes affected board dynamics. By the time the 2nd anniversary of my snow melting system installation rolled around in April, Ridgemont Estates had become a model community. We had fair, transparent governance. We had active homeowner participation. We had sensible rules that balanced individual property rights with community standards. And we had 16 homes with snow melting systems, making our sidewalks some of the safest in Lakewood. The City Council passed their incentive program in May, offering a 15% tax credit for snow melting system installations. I received a check for $6,300, a nice bonus for something I would have done anyway. In June, at the annual homeowners meeting, Susan announced that she would be stepping down as board president at the end of her term. She was moving to Arizona for a new job. The announcement was met with sadness, but also gratitude for her excellent leadership. Tom was elected as the new president in July. His first act was to appoint a new community safety position on the board, focused specifically on winter weather preparedness and sidewalk maintenance. The position went to Mrs. Patterson, who had become an advocate for accessibility and safety after her own experience with a fall and subsequent snow melting system installation. In August, I received a letter from the Denver Post. They were doing a follow-up article on their HOA reform piece from the previous year. They wanted to check in on Ridgemont Estates and see how things had progressed. I agreed to an interview. The article ran in September and painted a positive picture of our community transformation. It included quotes from multiple residents, including Mrs. Patterson talking about how the community had supported her after her fall, and Tom discussing the importance of servant leadership on HOA boards. The article mentioned me briefly, noting that I had chosen to step back from the board but remained active in community governance through the advisory committee. The reporter wrote, "Xavier's case demonstrates that sometimes the best leaders are those who do not seek power, but step up when needed and step back when the work is done." I appreciated that assessment. I had never wanted to be an HOA crusader. I just wanted to heat my driveway. But when the situation required action, I acted. And when the immediate crisis was resolved and better systems were in place, I was content to let others take the lead. In October, I ran into Brenda Morrison one more time at a coffee shop in downtown Lakewood. She was with a woman about her age, both of them laughing at something on a phone. She looked happy, more relaxed than I had ever seen her. "Mr. Xavier," she said when she noticed me. "How are you?" "I am doing well, Mrs. Morrison. You look like you are doing well too." "I am," she said with a genuine smile. "This is my friend Janet. We are in a book club together. Life is much simpler these days." "That is good to hear." I read the article in the Post. The community looks like it is thriving. It is. We have a good team in place. That is wonderful. I am glad it worked out well. And Marcus, if I can call you that, I really am sorry for how I treated you. You did not deserve any of that. I appreciate you saying that, Brenda. I hope you are finding peace. I am, finally. She smiled again and returned to her friend. As I left the coffee shop, I thought about how much had changed in less than 3 years. A heated driveway, of all things, had set in motion a series of events that transformed a community, changed lives, and taught me more about leadership, conflict resolution, and community engagement than I ever expected to learn. The following winter was my third with the snow melting system, and it performed flawlessly as always. Each time I walked outside to a clear sidewalk, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. The frustration of those early finds, the anxiety of standing up to Brenda, the satisfaction of seeing positive change take root, and the peace of knowing that sometimes fighting for what is right leads to outcomes better than anything you could have planned. In February of that third winter, I was working from home when my doorbell rang. A woman I did not recognize stood on my porch, probably in her 30s, holding a file folder. "Mr. Xavier? My name is Jennifer Martinez. I live 3 blocks over. I am planning to run for the HOA board in the next election, and I was hoping you might have some time to talk with me about your experience." I invited her in, made coffee, and spent the next 2 hours sharing what I had learned. She asked thoughtful questions, took detailed notes, and had clearly done her research. When she left, I felt confident that the community would be in good hands. The years that followed brought continued stability to Ridgemont Estates. Jennifer was elected to the board and proved to be an excellent addition. Tom served 2 terms as president before passing the torch to a younger homeowner with a background in nonprofit management. The advisory committee I chaired became a permanent fixture of community governance, ensuring that homeowners always had a voice in major decisions. My snow melting system continued to operate perfectly, requiring only routine maintenance. The number of homes with systems in Ridgemont Estates grew to 32, about 20% of the community. The city's incentive program expanded to other safety modifications, including handrails, ramp installations, and improved outdoor lighting. I eventually stepped down from the advisory committee chair position after 4 years, handing it over to someone with fresh ideas and energy. I remained involved as a regular participant in community meetings, but I was no longer in any leadership role. Throughout all of this, I never forgot the lesson at the heart of my experience. Rules matter, but only when they are applied fairly and with common sense. An HOA can be a force for good, protecting property values and maintaining community standards. But it can also become a tool of petty tyranny when the wrong people hold power for the wrong reasons. The key is engagement. If homeowners pay attention, participate in governance, and hold leaders accountable, an HOA serves its intended purpose. If homeowners are apathetic and disconnected, power-hungry individuals like Brenda Morrison will fill the vacuum. My heated driveway still works perfectly, clear and dry within minutes of any snowfall. Every winter morning, I look out my kitchen window and feel grateful, not just for the convenience of the system, but for everything that came from standing up for myself when it would have been easier to give in. That first fine notice taped to my door had felt like a crisis, an overwhelming problem with no clear solution. But it turned out to be an opportunity, a chance to make a real difference in my community. I never would have chosen to fight with an HOA. But I am glad I did, because in fighting that battle, I learned what it means to be a good neighbor and an engaged citizen. And every winter, when the snow falls and my driveway stays clear, I remember that sometimes the most important stands we take are over things that seem small, because principles matter regardless of scale. Whether it is a heated driveway or a fundamental question of fairness and due process, standing up for what is right is always worth the effort, even when the outcome is uncertain. Today, Ridgemont Estates is a community that works. We have our disagreements and challenges, as any community does. But we have systems in place to address those challenges fairly. We have leaders who serve rather than rule. And we have engaged homeowners who understand that the community belongs to all of us, not just the few who hold titles. My involvement in all of this came from the simple desire to not shovel snow anymore. But it taught me that ordinary people can create extraordinary change when they refuse to accept injustice, even in small things. That lesson extends far beyond HOA politics. It is a reminder that every one of us has power, if we choose to use it, and that standing up for ourselves and others is not just a right but a responsibility. The snow melting system that started this entire journey cost me $42,000 and months of stress. Looking back, I would not change a thing. It was worth every penny and every sleepless night, not just for the convenience it provides, but for the community it helped create and the person it helped me become. And that, ultimately, is the real value of standing up for what is right. The immediate victory matters, but the lasting impact on ourselves and our communities matters even more. Every time I walk out to a clear sidewalk on a snowy morning, I am reminded of that truth, and I am grateful for the heated driveway that changed everything.